Well, Chris, I guess first, how do you assess the performance overall?
Yeah, well, I mean, we had a really bad night, and that was pretty clear from early in the game. And the opposition were good. You always look at them and see the amount of talent they have, and sort of hope that it's not all going to come together against you. But I think it's sort of symptomatic of what we're seeing across the season a bit. If you're off, you can lose to anyone. And if the opposition are really good, you're going to find yourself under pressure. But I thought it was an uncharacteristic performance. So if that happens regularly, you just become a bad team. I don't think that's us at the moment. But yeah, right from the start of the game, we weren't getting what we wanted, what we talked about. And even when we did get some looks later in the game, it was uncharacteristic, but we just didn't make the most of them.
Was there one thing in particular that stood out that wasn't working for you? Like the Dogs got you around the ball a fair bit, for example?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, they're the best team in the comp at scoring from stoppages, so we knew that. And when you're a little bit off around there against a team like that, that's obviously going to hurt you. It cost us field position early in the conditions, which we normally play pretty well. It just looked like they played them better than us from early in the game, but that bit's disappointing. You don't like to be outplayed in the adjustment that's required in those conditions. And then I thought we just, really late in the game, we opened it up trying to score, and then you look really bad when that doesn't come off. So leave that to one side. But when the game was a bit more on the line, we had some chances going forward, and we just kicked it to them, which again is unusual. But yeah, we'll do our best not to drop our bundle.
Looked like you're starting to gain a bit of a foothold in that third quarter. Like you're going to punish them for missing a few opportunities. Did you tweak anything at the start of that term? Or?
Yeah, we did at half time. We did change a few things, and we had a few guys that were off, and some of our best players. We tried to get into the game a little bit more with a few positional changes. And it looked good early in that quarter, but again, even then, we sort of looked like we had some ascendancy, and then we just gave the ball back. And again, I'll say it for about the fourth time, it just seemed uncharacteristic going to what looked like good looks into our forward line, and we just picked them out almost as if we were trying.
Losing Tom Atkins before the game had much of an influence, one of your better wet weather players, I think.
Yeah, he's good in those conditions, so that was disappointing. But we just had so many off that I'm not sure, Tom could have made up for all of them.
Just a 1 weeker. Tom, what was actually the issue there?
We think so, yeah. It's my understanding is some sort of neural hamstring. So, yeah, they're optimistic he could be right, but I'm not even sure my assessment's right. I didn't listen too hard. They just said he didn't come up and we moved on.
And Shannon Neal, was that a conditions or an injury?
No, more the conditions. As it is, the conditions got better as the night went on. I mean, they still weren't good. The ground was heavy. And again, we just sort of kicked it to them, which would have made it hard for anyone.
Tanner Bruin seemed to come through that VFL game pretty well earlier. Is that a pretty welcome inclusion to midfield next week? Yeah,
I think so. That's looking likely. It was great that he got through, and said it a few times, he's been training really hard because the wrist allowed him to do plenty of running, and he's been handling the ball for a little bit, so that's a positive sign that he got through.
Tonight you've mentioned uncharacteristic a few times. Obviously you learn things from it. Do you mostly treat it as an anomaly, or is it one where you can sort of pull quite a few threads from it?
I think you need to make sure that you're reviewing it in an apples to apples sort of scenario. It was a different sort of game, and again, I think we've got to focus. I'm never a believer that you just move on, forget about it, stick your head in the sand, pretend it didn't happen. But every team seems to be playing different conditions every week. We're under the roof at Marvel at some point, and that's a little bit different. But certainly, it was frustrating, as I said earlier, that there was a way to play those conditions, and we played into the opposition's hands too much, too often early in the game, and gave them some confidence. And they got some talented players ahead of the ball, and they made the most of some half chances, which gave them some confidence.
How much of a challenge is it dealing with their 3 tall forwards? They all got their tails up at different points throughout the night. Is that one of the more unique forward lines in the moment?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it sort of works or it doesn't. But I tend to think that you look at it and think it's going to work a lot, because like take Jamara, for example. It wasn't as if he was just taking hangers all day. Like, he was better on the ground than he was in the air, to my eye. Like even the first shot that he took, that's a sort of low percentage shot. When he nails it and gets his confidence up, that's a concern.
Last week you took 70 more marks in Collingwood. There was none of that tonight. Is it hard to adjust to different styles in that space of a week, different conditions?
Well, that's what I was alluding to earlier, in that you do need to adjust. And I actually thought we marked the ball too much early. It's just the game called for a different style. And that's probably the part we'll review. But again, we're playing Tassie next week, which will be a different challenge again. So I think in the past, when the competition wasn't so even, you could get away with a few of those errors. Now you just get punished for those mistakes. But even more than that, this is unscientific and not very sophisticated. But early on, it really looked like we were just off. And then we had a few guys that were, not at their best for various reasons. But that wasn't the whole thing. It was just more, we're going to have to make some adjustments here just to stay in the game.
Were you surprised by just how influential Rory Lobb was? Like, he clearly did a very good job on Jeremy, who's an outstanding player, and you mentioned he plays kick it to a fair bit. He was one of those key interceptors too. Yeah,
I thought Jeremy was one of those guys that had an off night. And Lobb was good enough to mark the ball when we kicked it to him. But again, it was sort of like one of those things that either, for a goal like that, if he's marking the ball, it's going to look really good. And that was obviously the challenge for us. Don't let him do that, and we might have the advantage. But he was too good in a lot of those instances.
I know you train here, obviously, all week, but were you surprised at how the conditions looked particularly difficult out there tonight? Like the ground, very soft. I know there was the VFL before. Was it particularly difficult, even for a wet night?
Yeah, it was heavy. But interestingly, as the game went on, the game seemed to improve in terms of the ball handling and the footing the longer it went, which is a bit counterintuitive with the early game. As you said, it was clearly heavy and more of a wet weather game, which again, it's just calling we didn't play the conditions well. Thanks.
Thank you.